nacho, or not nacho, probably, you know what, I'm not going to get your hopes up about this nacho. It does say excludes nacho. Also, it says beer in mason jars, but you won't be able to see it. But in this picture, the beer is clearly in those solo party cups that you have at parties, but they have Toby Keith's initials on them. Anyway, I thought that might be fun for us later. If you guys want to go. It's Suite E4, Orlando, Florida. So we can talk about that at the Q&A, maybe. How many of us do you think they're going to be for the table?
Party 2, it looks like.
You guys want to go, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to work a shift later there.
Okay. Are you a whiskey girl?
I might be. It's my first day. I'm just showing up to see what work they got for me. I'm hoping for, not, fingers crossed, whiskey girl.
I'm pretty sure that you get that. It looks like they kind of nap on the bar a little bit. I don't know, maybe they don't know how restaurants work. We could go and talk to them about it. Anyway.
It's Toby Keith's youth hostel. Toby Keith B&B.
People that Toby Keith is kidnapped and keeps in a basement. They do have TV that is 100% for certain on a sports channel, but they blurt it out, but not so much that you can't tell it's sports. Well, hi. So do you guys want a panel about Nightvale? Woo! Well, then let's do it. My name is Maureen Johnson. Next to me, yeah, not in this empty chair, or the one after it, but the one after that, sits a man, not a man, more than a man, a writer man. Named Joseph Fink.
It's Jeffrey Craner.
That's kidding. Jeffrey Craner. Next to that man sits another man.
Awesome.
You may know him as Cecil Ball. And next to that man sits a scientist. You may know him as Carlos. His real name is Dylan, but he calls himself Carlos. Because that's acting. Like many people, I started to see super weird, incomprehensible references online to things like glow clouds.
All hail the glow cloud.
We'll discuss. And I was like, what is this? And the people kept telling me, like, oh, you're from Nightvale. You're from Nightvale. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not from Nightvale. What's Nightvale?
Oh, no.
And there was like, you're from Nightvale. And so finally I started listening to it, and I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard. And I became totally obsessed with listening to it. And then in ways I can't actually remember, but you guys somehow we got in touch. And then they hired me and made me an intern. I am one of many underpaid and overworked interns at Nightvale Community Radio.
Aw.
None of us end up well. And I can 100% tell you none of us are getting our credit. Because someone doesn't do paperwork. And I am a huge fan. And oh, look at you, are you blushing? No, he's not blushing. He's like, I'm famous now. I'm Teflon to compliments. So I thought I would begin. And did you guys do a panel earlier today? I don't know, because I spend the rest of my time in a sort of frozen chamber. They don't let me talk to or have any contact with anybody, so I don't know.
No.
This is the first panel of the day?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
I mean, Nightvale related, yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is our first Nightvale
Nightvale panel.
of the day.
I had a panel in the lobby.
Okay. Lobby, Cecil lobby panel. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna start because I want to ask a few general questions about how Nightvale gets started. Is this a good voice? I'm not gonna use that voice. Many of you work with a group called the Neo-Futurists.
Woo!
Do you all? And I believe it's all of you.
All three of us
Can
have the
you tell us a little bit about how you all met and how that got started, or your connection with the Neo-Futurists?
Yeah. Sure. I was in the company first. I joined the company back in late 2006. It is a theater company based in Chicago, and also there is a company in New York City that the company in Chicago started in 1988, and then it branched out to New York City in 2004. And there just is a recent one that just started up in San Francisco. The premise of the Neo-Futurist Theater Company, it is an ensemble, it is a collective of writers and performers, and they do a weekly show called Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind. And the premise of this show, it's probably also, the title is probably also true. And but the premise of the show is 30 plays in 60 minutes. And the idea is that that collective of writers and performers, they will write 30 short plays. And when the show starts that night, there is a timer on the wall that counts down 60 minutes. And at the start of the show, they start the clock. And those minutes roll off one at a time, one each minute. And basically, at the end of the show, the end of the show is either you've finished all 30 plays, or that clock goes off and the show just stops. Even if you're in the middle of the play, it just stops. And the other component of the show is that it's done in random order. There's a bunch of numbers hanging from a clothesline, and the audience at the end of a play just shouts another number, grab it off a clothesline, being like, oh, okay, we're doing this play now, and we do that play. So it's kind of theater as sport. And the main thing, though, that comes out of Neo-Futurism is it's a very specific aesthetic where we do not play characters. There is this thing where I think probably early on when Cecil's character got the name Cecil, kind of loosely came out of that neo-futurist thing where you're just like, oh, you're just yourself. Why wouldn't I name Cecil's character Cecil? Sure, why not? Let's do that. But the thing in neo-futurist is that it is about you. You are always you. I am Jeffrey Craner. I am in room 210, and I'm at Geekycon. The date is July 31st. Like, I'm not going to pretend to be like a Russian czar at the turn of the century. I'm going to always be me in this room with you, and I can see all of you, and I'm not going to pretend like you're not here. So that's the basic aesthetic of the neo-futurists, and these guys joined a couple years after I did, and then Joseph, who is not a member of the Neo-Futurists, but has been super heavily involved in working with the Neo-Futurists for many years. That's how we got to know him. And Meg Bashwinner, who plays Deb, the sentient patch of haze, and also does the credits at the end of the show, and does the proverb. Meg Bashwinner is also a member of that company too.
So it's like deep in our roots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did Nightvale come directly out of, or was Nightvale kind of inspired by that, or?
Nightvale, loosely. I mean, Joseph and I, just hung out so much after Too Much Light so many times that we were just like, let's just write a thing. So we wrote a play together, and it was kind of loosely in the neo-futurist aesthetic. And during the process, we both started talking about podcasts we like. Like, here's a Comedy Bang Bang. It's so good. Stop podcasting yourself. It's so good. There's so many really great things out there that we really love to listen to. And then he was like, I want to do a podcast. I'm like, great. And then I didn't think about it for a while, and then one day he just emailed me the pilot episode that he had written, and then he had asked Cecil, and Cecil, well, you tell him about the play you wrote.
So I got involved by knowing these guys, but also, I've had like kind of a deep, sort of sonorous radio announcer voice since I was like young, and people would tell me, oh, you have such a nice voice, you should be on the radio. And I was like, yeah, I do. I should be on the radio. Do you work in radio? Can you hire me? No? Then there's nothing we can do about that, is And this happened like over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And being an actor in New York City, it's frustrating, like butting your head up against a wall so many times and trying to break into the voiceover business, and nobody wants to give you anything and like any kind of leg up. So I wrote a play because, again, you are who you are, you're doing what you're doing, you are where you are. So I wrote a play about this experience. And it ended, the play ended with me going, well, you know what, if I can't get a job doing this, because I've been in New York for 10 years and no one will pay me to talk, then then damn it, I'm gonna give it away for free, because that's what you should be doing. You should share, if you have a gift, share it with the world. So I picked a random audience member every night, and I would re-record their outgoing voicemail message, a la Carl Castle, and that was my gift. And Joseph Fink saw this play and was like, wow, that guy does have like kind of that sort of throwback radio sound, like radio voice sound, and that would be kind of perfect for this, NPR through the lens of David Lynch kind of show that I'm working on. And he asked me if I wanted to do the pilot, and I said, I love all of these things that you're saying to me, and we met in a coffee shop, and he loaned me a $30 microphone, and I took it home, and I recorded the pilot, and then we just kept making them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I joined the New York Neo-Futurists in 2012, kind of coming from the comedy world, which was where I was kind of starting off and where I was getting most of my gigs out of college. But I was really craving a theater company that was honest and embraced comedy, but also accepted that if the only rule is to make people laugh, you're going to make a lot of really empty things. And so I joined the Neo-Futurists, and I was really thrilled, and I met some amazing people. And in fact, I think it was about a month into my first run with the company was when the pilot episode of Nightvale came out. So I was just exposed to Nightvale as this cool thing that my coworkers were doing. And then I started listening, and I just thought that it was this really amazing project that these people who I really respected were part of. And then the podcast had actually been around for a year and a half. Jeffrey, lovely gentleman over here, had recorded an episode as the voice of Carlos, and in that strange and wonderful gift you have when you work with people who are socially aware.
Go on.
That's the gift. Yeah. Jeffrey just made that happen with his in that strange and wonderful gift you have when you're working with people who are as aware as Joseph and Jeffrey are. Jeffrey did not feel comfortable being a straight white guy playing a queer brown character. And you never get that in the entertainment industry. You never get people who really think that way. You get people who think, how can we make the most money? And so then I was cast. When I bought this phone, I don't know if I've told you this, Jeffrey. When I bought this phone at the Apple store, and the gentleman who sold me the phone activated my phone, the first email that came through right at that moment was Jeffrey's email asking me to be part of Nightvale.
Aww.
Yeah. So buy an iPhone. And it's been it's been like one of the most amazing things I've ever done in my life. I think when you're coming from the theater, when you're coming from downtown theater, you're used to your work reaching about 99 people on the absolute best night. That's a sold-out house for us. To get to do your work on a bigger stage, that's not the goal, but it is a really, really cool thing that gets to happen. It is still such a thrill to share your work with 30, 50, 60 people who are in a room and ready to listen to you. But it is such a beautiful thing to get to share your work on a nationwide tour, which we just did this spring. There's kind of nothing like it, so I feel really proud to be a part of it.
And before we're going to get into the content of Nightvale, and we're going to get your questions, but we'll just briefly kind of address what I think a lot of people love about Nightvale is that it seems it's not completely unique, but completely unique in that you make a piece, you make a piece of art and entertainment and a story that proves that you can make something and be socially aware and not be assholes. Like you've always made that part of the mission. And it's so clear, and actually seeing the show, it's even clearer because you're actually there in the room with everybody. And I feel like that's what a lot of people appreciate. Not only is it this, but it's the leading. I feel like it's an example of you can do this. Here's a diverse cast. Here's when you even hear, and they, of course, when you realize even when you realize that some of the characters are for a smooth river rock. This is truly the most diverse cast you'll ever. That there is literally a 5-headed dragon. This is fully. But
everyone looks over at Hiram.
And do you feel that strong? I mean, did you ever? We'll ask. As things have gotten bigger, have you ever had? Did you get reactions to that, or do you have people coming up to you in sort of showbiz or anything, going, "Wow, this is remarkable. We didn't know this was possible," or does that ever happen?
I mean, honestly, I really haven't had anybody in the business, the show business. I've had people who work for blogs, news outlets or something, ask us questions about that, because that's similar to what you're doing, which is trying to get inside the story of the creation of Nightvale. But
you're saying I'm the same as them?
No. I'm saying
no, it's fine. You won't be getting the nacho.
But I've had people curious about the creation of Nightvale ask that question before, but I haven't had people in the industry, people who work in television and film, ask that. We've worked with a lot of people. It's just not. We realized kind of early on that's just, it's really weird when we get complimented in a way about it, because it seems
natural.
I was telling somebody the other day that, because we were talking about Dylan's amazing YouTube and Tumblr series that he's doing, every single word spoken by a person. And what that series does is it gets to the heart of something we all know, but it brings it down to a few seconds, and by seeing those few seconds, and it really brings it home. And then more than anything else, the button at the end, the most. To me, the thing that really drives each of those videos home is when it says starring, and then you see the character names, and you realize, wow, not only is there so little representation, there's not actually there's so little character development for those parts that there weren't even names given. There was just Doctor Number 2 or whatever. And so I think for us, I honestly, from the get-go, I wasn't really ever thinking about it. I'm just much more conscious about it now when Joseph and I talk about who to cast in a thing. We just realize that, we probably, in our circle of doing theater for the past many, many, many years, over the course of my 20 years in theater, and Joseph's, Joseph's a little younger than I am, so, maybe a few less years there. But we have a collective, many years in theater, and we've built a bunch of friendships and connections to, dozens of really great actors, and we've managed to, without really having to try that hard, find really talented people. And I wouldn't say that the cast of Nightvale fully represents everyone on Earth in some way, but I think that it's really shocking when I look at Dylan's series and I see what comes out in film and television. They literally have thousands upon thousands of people to cast from, and they can't accomplish just what I think should just be kind of baseline humanity that isn't even worthy of a compliment. Which is, I don't know, it's fascinating. It's grown from I didn't even think about it at first, and then people pointed it out, and you're like, oh, this is a thing you can do, and it is important. And so now we try and be very, very conscious of how we do that.
You should clap for that. I got the thrill of my life when they asked me to participate in their town hall show on Broadway. I had 2 lines because that is about what you wouldn't give to me, and I was already terrified of going near the microphone and had to ask someone to adjust it for me because I was convinced I was going to knock it over, set fire to the theater, and everyone would die. But I was watching them rehearse and you were getting the scripts ready, and even just when you guys were getting ready to go out, you're like, oh, you just that introduction of going out and saying hi to the audience that usually starts with ladies and gentlemen, that you saw them, they stopped and were like, we can't say that. That's not what we're about. Like, let's rewrite that. And it was like that, I was like, these guys, these guys are special. And that is so meaningful to so many people. And like, I think that's probably why, not only do you have devotion because it's the most awesome show, it's just awesome. Like, it just has a goodness about it that kind of glows like a cloud.
All hail.
Yeah.
I mean that, like, it really is something quite unique. So now you're famous. Let's talk about that, because that, I think, is, how did you guys first, when did it start to dawn on you, the oh my God moment?
For me, the oh my God moment
of-
was, I was talking about the Tumblr ask me question thing upstairs. I was fired from my day job a few years ago as a waiter in a very terrible, it's a very good restaurant, but a very kind of terrible, soul-crushing work environment, waiting on fashion designers and celebrities, and it just, it was bad. It was bad news. But I got fired from that.
Was it Toby Keith?
It was Toby Keith. I still put that on my resume. But I took a little time to go down and visit an old friend of mine here in Florida, and she was working on her dissertation, and she was taking a little break, and she was like, "Hey, you should Google your name really quick and just see what happens."
That's almost never a good start to any story.
Right. And so I did, and we were just kind of shocked that there were all these drawings of Cecil Baldwin that looked nothing like me. And just over and over and over and over and over and over, and we kind of fell down this rabbit hole of just like, what is happening? And Kate had not heard of this podcast thing, and I certainly didn't think that it was anything that anyone outside of a very small circle of people had heard of. And that was kind of the moment where it was like, oh, not only are people beyond my immediate family and friends listening to this, but they are impacted by it so much that they are taking time out of their lives to draw characters from the show. And then also some of them dress up like people from the show. And I didn't know what that was or what that meant. And she was like, yeah, they're cosplaying you. And I was like, wait, so is this like improv? like you meet somebody else wearing the same, like what happens when two people from other universes, like they can't talk to each other, you live in a different world. I don't understand what cosplay is. And on our show, at this point, like there's very few physical descriptors of the characters, so these people were just taking pure creativity on their own part and expanding that. And all of that combined, just like I needed a nap after that, because it was so crazy to me that this was something that I had helped make, and it was something directly related to me. And I don't know, that was kind of that moment where I was like, I don't know how to deal with this.
And then you drove
properly.
off in your Porsche.
That's it. And that equaled millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, that's exactly how these things work.
Yeah.
Also, the first time I ever heard the term cosplay, I thought it was a math term. Like cosine. I thought it was from some kind of advanced calculus.
Surely somebody is dressed up as like a cosine.
Yes.
Like on a graph.
Cosplay?
Yeah.
Math
Cosine
cosplay.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they haven't. I don't know.
If you can think of it, it has happened. So when did you feel, as a creator, when did you feel the kind of shift like, oh, I think some people might be listening to this?
I
was driving in my Porsche.
And then suddenly it was a convertible, and I'm like, oh no, it's really I was actually, it was like that first year was kind of when we had, like July of 2013, when the show kind of had a big blow up. And we had been, doing pretty well in the first year. Like it just, it had grown from our first episode the first month of that first episode, I think our total downloads were like 52. And so that was pretty. I was like, Joseph, that means you and I together have 52 friends, which was really cool. And then, but yeah, it was about that year later when it was starting to blow up, and we didn't realize it was happening because while I have a Tumblr page, I wasn't using it because I'm terrible at using my website at all, and it was just kind of sitting dormant. So I wasn't ever looking at Tumblr, and that's where a lot of the blow up was happening. And I was with Jillian, my wife, and I were on vacation with my family at like a beach house in Portland. We're rich. We're not. And it was fun. It was like a family house out in Astoria area of Portland, or Astoria area of Oregon. And we were just hanging out. We didn't. I wasn't really checking internet that much. And then my cousin came in. He was like, "That's really amazing. You guys topped Mark Maron." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You guys topped Mark Maron." I'm like, "We're like number 50 or 60 on the iTunes chart." And he was like, no, you topped Mark Maron. And then we looked it up, and we were number 2 behind Nerdist on the comedy charts. And I was like, "Wow, that's really amazing. That's really cool." And then the very next day, we topped Nerdist. And then 3 days later, we topped This American Life on the overall charts. And I was just and then our server crashed because we were hosting it on my personal website.
Oh no!
And then we immediately had to move it to Libsyn, which is the kind of the main podcast hosting service. But yeah, that was the moment that I realized, like, oh, this is not just like, oh, cool, John Darnielle mentioned us on Twitter. This is really cool. Like, we got a bump in listeners. Like, this was something that you really just can't process at all. Like the number of people that came to it.
I was actually really proud that I think we reached number 2 on the UK iTunes. And I was like, that to me was kind of a moment where I was like, number 1 in America, great. That, but like we've literally expanded internationally, and for a bunch of Americans to be the second most listened to podcast in the UK, where I think they're kind of like fiercely, like they're like the pride.
They have good stuff.
They have good stuff, and like they take language and writing so seriously.
They actually have proper radio drama to listen
like
to.
radio drama is funded by the government. Like we actually believe that this is something that all people should, like, it's an inalienable right.
52 in the UK has ever listened to a radio.
No.
Ever. Except for Nightvale.
What?
Except for Nightvale.
Because I keep the BBC radio app on my phone and listen to everything except The Archers, because I have standards, but do we count? Americans don't count? Do we count? I'm serious, that's a question. Would you say...
People here actually know what The Archers is.
No.
Okay, I listen to
It's
the...
like soap opera kind of thing, but it's...
It takes place in the country, and like someone has a bucket. Yeah. But
It's real country bumpkin stuff.
But there's a ton of this amazing UK radio. I really listen to it constantly. Where actual whole radio plays, and you've brought back, I think, in many ways, the radio play, which is super exciting. Because as someone who does not want to talk to anyone or leave their house.
Well, yeah, it's I mean, like, not since
things.
like not since Orson Welles
Except you guys.
caused a panic with War of the Worlds. Like that to me is. Like that to me is like the only radio drama moment in history that I can think of. Most, like that, and that was what, 40... like 80 years ago, 90 years ago. Like that's crazy. And people are like, "Oh, you're making radio, radio cool again." Mm-hmm. I'm like, that is hilarious because we are probably some of the least cool people to do that, but it's just a testament to like how if you do it and you love it and you make it, eventually you'll find people that also love it.
You guys are super cool. I went to that time at your house and you had like 3 different flavors of hummus. And like 2 chips to go with them. It was a cool party.
Yeah, that's right. Famous and rich.
That's what you do. You get the trio of hummus dips. And say, dive in, choose one. No nacho.
I think for me, just for that moment thing, I joined when Nightvale was already full steam ahead. I feel like it was a train that I was invited to board at a train station I happened to be at. But I think the moment for me actually came on this tour, our 2-month tour, and we were in Birmingham, Alabama, which is a very racist and very homophobic place. To generalize, there are wonderful people there, and but I remember one of my favorite things to do is to talk to people after the show, and I was talking to this young woman, and she was queer and she was of color,